I knew something was off the moment my father put his fork down. The clatter of silverware against porcelain cut through the warmth of Christmas dinner, freezing the conversation mid-laugh. His eyes, sharp and cold, locked onto mine. "You're a burden," David said, his voice steady, "and you can't live here anymore." At first, I thought it was a joke, a bad one, but then I saw my mother, Linda, gripping her napkin like it was the only thing keeping her from vanishing. A nervous, fake laugh escaped her lips before she quickly looked away. My little sister, Sarah, had her fork suspended midair, her face pale as if the words had physically struck her. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Excuse me?" David leaned back in his chair, unfazed. "You heard me. You need to move out." Silence swallowed the room whole. The Christmas lights on the tree flickered, their glow making the whole scene feel almost surreal. I wasn't a kid. I wasn't some jobless leech living off my parents. I was 23, working full-time, and the only reason this house still had heat, internet, and groceries was because I paid for them. David hadn't worked in years, and Linda's part-time income barely covered her personal expenses. I was the one keeping things afloat, and yet I was the one being thrown out like trash. Mom finally spoke, her voice hesitant. "Maybe we should talk about this later." "No." David cut her off, his tone final. "This is my house. I make the rules, and I say she's done here." Sarah dropped her fork, her expression shifting from confusion to outright fear. If they could do this to me, how long before they turned on her? I took a slow breath, willing my hands to stay steady. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't argue. If this was what they wanted, fine. I leaned back in my chair. All right. For a split second, David looked almost triumphant, like he'd won something. I glanced at Linda, hoping for even a sliver of hesitation of guilt, but she stayed quiet, staring at her plate. Sarah was the only one who looked like she still cared. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. I took my plate, rinsed it in the sink, and without another word, walked to my room. If they wanted me gone, they were about to find out what that really meant. I didn't slam the door when I got to my room. I didn't cry or throw things. I just grabbed my suitcase from the closet and started packing. If they wanted me out, I'd go, but they had no idea what that actually meant. The sound of muffled voices drifted upstairs. Linda's nervous tone, David's firm, unyielding one. I caught bits and pieces. "She's old enough. We can handle it. She should have moved out years ago." I almost laughed. They had no idea they were about to drown. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Sarah. She slipped inside, shutting the door behind her. Her eyes were red, her lips pressed tight, like she was holding back words too big to say. "What the hell was that?" she whispered. I shoved a few shirts into my bag. "You tell me. They can't just kick you out like this." She shook her head, arms wrapped around herself. "You pay for everything. What are they even thinking?" I zipped up my laptop case. "Not my problem anymore." She bit her lip, hesitating. "Where are you going?" I exhaled slowly. "I'll figure it out." The truth was, I had some savings, but I hadn't exactly planned to be homeless on Christmas night. Maybe I could crash with Jake for a while, but I wasn't worried. I'd be fine. They wouldn't. Sarah shifted on her feet. "Can I?" She stopped, eyes flickering to the door like she was afraid someone might hear. "Can I come with you?" I clenched my jaw. She was 16, still in high school. As much as I hated leaving her in this house, I knew they'd never let her go. "You know that's not an option," I said. She looked at the ground, her fingers twisting in the hem of her sweater. "Yeah." I finished packing in silence. She didn't move. Finally, she sighed. "They're going to regret this." I smirked. "I know." The next morning, I woke up before anyone else. No dramatic goodbyes, no final words. I carried my bags downstairs, my footsteps light against the hardwood floor. The house was quiet, peaceful even. It wouldn't be for long. I stepped outside into the cold morning air, my breath turning to mist. As I reached my car, I pulled out my phone and did what I should have done a long time ago. One by one, I removed my name from every bill: electric, internet, water, even the Netflix account. I stared at the screen for a moment before hitting confirm. Without me, everything would shut off within a month. I smiled, tossed my bag in the car, and drove away without looking back. Jake's apartment was small, cramped, and reeked of old pizza. His couch was lumpy. His dog, Max, wouldn't stop staring at me, and his roommate kept asking if I was planning to stay forever. None of it mattered, because for the first time in years, I was free. I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing against the coffee table. For a second, I forgot where I was. The couch beneath me was stiff, and Max, Jake's oversized mutt, was curled up next to me, his wet nose pressed against my arm. Sunlight leaked through the cheap blinds, casting striped shadows across the floor. The buzzing continued. 10 missed calls from Mom, a couple from David, which was surprising because he never called me, and a single message from Sarah. Sarah, they're freaking out. The power's been cut off. I sat up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes, and let out a slow breath. So it had begun. I ignored the calls, tossed my phone onto the table, and stretched. Jake shuffled out of his bedroom, scratching his head. Dude, your phone's been going off for an hour, he grumbled. Someone die? I snorted. Nope, but my parents are about to have a meltdown. He blinked at me. Good. Max yawned and flopped over, tail thumping against the couch. I picked my phone back up, scrolling through the texts. Mom, Maya, something's wrong with the bills. The power's out. The internet isn't working. Did you forget to pay? Mom, please call me back. Mom, your father is furious. He says you did this on purpose. Call me now. I tossed my phone onto the table again. Jake raised an eyebrow. That bad? They think the bills pay themselves. He smirked. Bet that Wi-Fi loss is hitting hard. I grinned. The house was probably dead silent. No TV, no scrolling on their phones, just the suffocating realization that they had screwed themselves. I imagined David pacing the living room, barking orders that Mom couldn't fix, blaming me for everything. The phone buzzed again. Another text from Sarah. Sarah, Dad's losing his mind. He said you did something to the house. I laughed. Loud. Jake shot me a look. Okay, now I'm curious. What's the idiot saying? I showed him the text, and he whistled. Wow. You really left them to rot, huh? They threw me out, I said, leaning back. They made their choice. Jake flopped onto the recliner. So, what now? You gonna talk to them? Hell no. My phone rang again. Mom. I sighed and picked up. The second I answered, she exploded. Maya, we don't know what happened. The power's out, the internet's down, the water bill. You didn't pay it, I said simply. Silence. Then, in a lower voice, you paid for those? I almost laughed. Are you serious? Who else did you think was paying for them? She hesitated. I could picture her standing in the dim kitchen, her grip tight on the phone. Your father said. I cut her off. Not my problem anymore. Maya, please, we didn't mean. I hung up. Jake let out a low whistle. Damn cold. They deserve it. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty about putting myself first. I had just started scrolling through my email when another notification popped up. Bank alert. Suspicious login attempt detected. My stomach dropped. I tapped the notification, and my heart started pounding. 3 failed login attempts. Attempted password reset. I exhaled sharply. There was no doubt in my mind who it was. I dialed Sarah immediately. She picked up on the first ring. I was just about to call you, she whispered. Dad's freaking out. He's been on the computer all morning, trying to get into my bank account. I finished. She cursed under her breath. He has that old notebook Mom used to keep passwords in. He's desperate. I clenched my jaw. Of course. Mom had always written passwords down in case she forgot them. David must have gone through it, hoping I was dumb enough to still be using my high school passwords. He's saying you ruined us, Sarah said quietly, that you did this on purpose just to screw him over. I scoffed. I didn't do anything. He kicked me out. He's talking about calling the cops. I froze. Then I laughed, sharp and bitter. For what? Not paying his bills? I don't know, she hissed. He's losing it. Mom's crying, saying she'll talk to you, but he won't listen. He's saying stuff like, she's not getting away with this. The hairs on my arms stood up. He's gonna do something stupid, Sarah whispered. I tightened my grip on the phone. Lock your door, I told her. If he does anything crazy, call me. I hung up and immediately changed every password I had: bank accounts, email, everything. Then I called my bank and locked my account so tight that even I had trouble getting in for a few hours. For a while, I thought that was the end of it. I was dead wrong. That night, Jake and I were lounging in the living room, playing some dumb game on his Xbox, when someone pounded on the door. Hard. Jake paused the game. You expecting someone? No. And I already had a bad feeling. I got up, walked to the peephole, and felt my stomach drop. David. He stood in the hallway, fists clenched, breathing like a bull ready to charge. Jake frowned. Who is it? Before I could answer, David banged again. Maya, open the damn door. My pulse skyrocketed. Another bang, harder this time. I know you're in there, he snarled. You think you can just walk away from this? Jake shot up from the couch. What the hell, dude? I backed away from the door and grabbed my phone. 911. The operator picked up immediately. 911. What's your emergency? My father just showed up at my apartment, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. He's trying to break in. Jake's expression darkened. Are you serious right now? I nodded. David kept yelling, You owe us. You can't just leave us to rot. Sir, officers are on their way, the dispatcher said. 2 minutes later, sirens. David's voice cut out. Then a knock. Police. Open up. I opened the door just in time to see 2 officers handcuffing my father. His face was red, chest heaving, but when he saw me, his eyes darkened with something I hadn't seen before. Not regret, not embarrassment, hatred. You did this, he growled as they led him away. I didn't respond, because the truth was, he did it to himself. The apartment was silent after they took David away. Jake let out a low whistle, rubbing his hands over his face. That was insane. I exhaled slowly, pulse still racing. Yeah, Max, sensing the tension, jumped onto the couch and pressed himself against my side. Jake crossed his arms. What now? You think he's actually gonna stay away? I didn't answer, because I already knew the truth. David wasn't done with me yet. An hour later, my phone rang. Sarah. I picked up immediately. Hey, he's gone, she said, her voice shaky. Mom's losing it. She's crying and blaming you for everything. Of course she was. She's saying you have to fix this, Sarah continued. She's already calling people, trying to get bail money. I almost laughed. With what money? Silence. Because we both knew they had none. No electricity, no internet, no savings, and now, no father figure to bark orders and pretend he had control over anything. Sarah sighed. She's getting desperate, Maya. I ran a hand through my hair. What do you mean? She hesitated. She's selling your stuff. I froze. What? She took your laptop and pawned it, Sarah whispered. I closed my eyes, taking a slow, measured breath. That was it. I grabbed my keys. I'm coming over. The drive to my old house felt surreal. I hadn't been gone long, but something about returning so soon felt wrong. As I pulled into the driveway, something made my stomach drop. My car. It was parked there, which didn't make sense, because I had left it at Jake's apartment. I turned off the engine, my hands tightening around the steering wheel. They stole my car. The front door swung open before I even got out. Linda stormed onto the porch, arms crossed. You called the cops on your own father? I stepped out, slamming the door behind me. You stole my car, she scoffed. It was just sitting there. You weren't using it. I stared at her, trying to process the sheer insanity of that logic. It's my car. She didn't answer, but I already knew. They had a spare key. I took a slow breath. Give me my key. She lifted her chin. Or what? I pulled out my phone and started dialing. Her expression flickered. Maya, I held up a finger. Yeah, hi. I'd like to report a stolen vehicle. Her face twisted in fury. Don't you dare. I ignored her. Uh-huh. It was taken without my permission. I know who has it. She let out a harsh breath, spun around, and disappeared inside. A minute later, she came back and threw the key at me. It hit my chest and landed in the grass. There, she spat. Happy? The first picked it up, keeping my anger in check. I'm taking my stuff, I said coldly. Then I'm leaving for good. I pushed past her into the house. Sarah was waiting in the hallway, looking tense. She took more than your car, she murmured. She sold your laptop. I clenched my jaw. Where was it going to end? I turned back to Linda. Where's my laptop? She didn't even flinch. We needed money. That's stealing. Her eyes burned with frustration. You left it behind. That makes it ours. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. I pulled up my phone, dialed 911 for the second time that week, and let her watch. Yes, I'd like to report stolen property. Linda's face drained of color. Maya, her voice was sharp, almost panicked. You don't have to do this. I stared at her. You didn't have to steal from me. The dispatcher spoke. What was taken? My laptop, I said. It was pawned without my permission. I have proof. Linda's breathing turned shallow. You can't. I ignored her. Yes, officer. I'd like to press charges. Sarah was frozen beside me, eyes darting between us. Linda's hands shook. She looked completely blindsided, as if she thought she could keep pushing, and I would just take it. Maya, she said again, softer this time. We're struggling. Your father's in jail. I had no choice. I laughed. You had a choice. You could have worked more. You could have sold your own stuff. You could have asked for help instead of treating me like garbage. Her face contorted. I was angry. So was I snapped. Sirens wailed in the distance. Linda jumped. A few minutes later, 2 police officers stepped inside. Sir, did you call about stolen property? One of them asked. I nodded. She took my laptop and pawned it. I want to press charges. Linda gasped like I had stabbed her. Maya, don't do this. The officers turned to her. Ma'am, is this true? She hesitated. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to calculate if she could lie her way out of this. Then Sarah spoke. She told him herself, she said quietly, right before he called you. Linda snapped her head towards Sarah so fast it was almost scary. You little MAAM. One of the cops cut her off. Do you have a receipt from the pawn shop? Her face fell. She knew what was coming. They took her outside. I watched through the window as they talked to her for a few minutes. Then handcuffs. She started struggling, started crying, started screaming. The neighbors peeked through their blinds. The whole street probably heard her wailing about how she was just a struggling mother, how this was unfair. Sarah stood beside me, staring out the window. She swallowed hard. Is this really happening? I nodded. Yes. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Then my phone buzzed. A message from an unfamiliar number. You're going to regret this. My chest tightened. I read it again. Then I realized David had been released on bail. I turned to Sarah, my voice deadly calm. You need to get out of here. Her face paled. What? You need to leave, I repeated. Pack a bag. Now. She hesitated. Maya, now. Because the moment I saw that message, I knew exactly what was coming next. Sarah moved fast. She didn't question me, didn't argue, just turned on her heel and disappeared into her room. I stood in the living room, gripping my phone, rereading the text over and over. You're going to regret this. I already knew who sent it. David, fresh out of jail and already looking for revenge. I clenched my jaw, forcing my breathing to steady. Fine, let him try. He wanted a fight? He'd get one. 10 minutes later, Sarah reappeared, a backpack slung over her shoulder. She looked shaken but determined. I'm ready, she said. I nodded, grabbed my car keys, and led the way out. Linda was still outside, cuffed, pleading with the officers. The second she saw us, her expression twisted into pure desperation. Maya, she shrieked. Don't do this. We're family. I didn't even look at her. She lunged forward, but the officers pulled her back. Sarah, don't you dare go with her. You belong here. Sarah hesitated, just for a second. Then she tightened her grip on her backpack and kept walking. Good girl. I threw the last of my things into the car and climbed into the driver's seat. Sarah settled into the passenger side, her hands gripping her knees. As I pulled out of the driveway, Linda screamed my name one last time. I didn't even blink. We drove in silence for a while. Sarah stared out the window, her face unreadable. I glanced at her. You okay? She exhaled sharply. I don't know. Fair. We pulled into Jake's apartment complex, and he was already outside waiting. He took one look at Sarah and gave me a questioning look. Long story, I muttered, stepping out. Sarah climbed out slowly, arms wrapped around herself. Jake didn't say anything, just let us inside. The second the door shut, she let out a shaky breath. I can't believe I actually left, she whispered. I dropped my bag on the floor. You made the right choice. She gave me a small, unsure nod. Jake clapped his hands together. Well, guess we're all one big dysfunctional family now, Sarah snorted. It was small, barely there, but it was something. Progress. For a few days, things felt still. Sarah and I settled into a weird, temporary rhythm. She crashed in Jake's spare room. I stayed on the couch, and we both tried to pretend our entire world hadn't just imploded. But then, the messages started coming. Blocked numbers, unfamiliar accounts, Facebook messages, Linda begging, David threatening. They were relentless. Sarah got a few too. She showed me one that nearly made my blood boil. Sarah, we can fix this, but you have to come home. You don't belong with her. I snatched the phone out of her hands and blocked the number. She watched me, lips pressed tight. They're never gonna stop, are they? I met her gaze. No, they're not. A beat of silence. Then maybe we should make it so they can't find us. I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? She swallowed. Change our numbers. Delete our social media. Cut them off for good. I studied her for a second. Are you sure? Her hands curled into fists. I don't ever want to go back there. That was all I needed to hear. That night we wiped ourselves clean. New phone numbers. Locked down social media. Full disappearance mode. And just like that, we were free. 2 years later, Sarah turned 18. She got accepted into college on the other side of the country. The second she got her dorm key, she called me. I did it, she whispered. I'm out. I smiled. Told you you'd make it. She hesitated. Do you ever think about them? I considered that for a moment. Then, Not anymore. Another pause. Then she exhaled a quiet, relieved laugh. Yeah, me neither. She was finally free, and so was I. And my parents? David never held a job. Linda lost the house within a year. They burned every bridge, scammed every last family member, and eventually ended up in a run-down apartment in a terrible part of town. The last time I ever heard anything about them, David had the nerve to send me a message through some fake account. We're struggling. We need help. You're still our daughter. I blocked it without replying. They made their choice that Christmas, and I made mine. Story 2. I always thought that if betrayal ever came for me, I'd see it from a mile away. Turns out, it was right under my nose the whole time. My name is Rachel, and at 28 I figured I had a good handle on life. I had a job I enjoyed, a boyfriend I adored, and a family that, while chaotic, was always there. My younger sister, Lily, was set to get married in a week. And while weddings are supposed to bring families together, all this one did was make me question everything I thought I knew. It started subtly, so subtle that I almost convinced myself I was imagining things. Lily had always been friendly, but lately, something about the way she interacted with my boyfriend, Ethan, felt off. At first, it was little things, laughing too hard at his jokes, even the ones that weren't funny, finding excuses to be near him, asking for his help with wedding details even when I was standing right there, her hand on his arm a little too long, her eyes lingering when she thought I wasn't looking. I brought it up to Ethan one evening after dinner at my parents' house. Did you notice how Lily was acting? I asked, my voice casual, but my stomach tight. He glanced at me, confused. What do you mean? I hesitated. I didn't want to sound paranoid, just the way she acts around you. The touching, the laughing, it's weird, right? He chuckled, shaking his head. Rachel, she's just excited about the wedding. You're overthinking it. Maybe I was. Maybe it was just the stress of wedding prep, making me see things that weren't there. But something in my gut wouldn't let it go. Over the next week, I paid closer attention, and the more I watched, the more I realized I wasn't imagining anything. At a family barbecue, I stepped inside to grab a drink. When I returned, I saw them, Lily and Ethan, standing close in the corner of the yard, heads tilted toward each other, her hand resting lightly on his chest. As she laughed at something he said, my stomach clenched. The moment they noticed me, they stepped apart. Too fast, too guilty. That night, I confronted Ethan again. Tell me the truth. Is something going on between you and Lily? He sighed, rubbing his temples. Rachel, no. She's just being friendly. You're reading into things that aren't there. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But something about the way he dismissed me so quickly made my doubts feel even heavier. So I did something I never thought I'd have to do. I confronted my own sister. Lily agreed to meet me for coffee, all smiles and excitement about her wedding. She had no idea what was coming. I didn't waste time. Lily, I need to talk to you about Ethan. She blinked, caught off guard. What about him? I took a deep breath. I've noticed how you act around him. The flirting, the touching. It makes me uncomfortable, and I need it to stop. For a second, I thought she'd deny it. But instead, she laughed. Rachel, come on. It's nothing. He's practically family. You're being paranoid. The way she brushed it off, like I was some insecure fool imagining things, made my blood boil. I'm not stupid, Lily, I snapped. I see what you're doing, and I don't know what's worse, that you're doing it or that you're lying to my face about it. Her face hardened. You're overreacting. Maybe you should think about why you're so insecure about your own relationship. That was it. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. If you have any respect for me at all, you'll back off. She scoffed, rolling her eyes. Whatever, Rachel. Believe whatever you want. I stormed out of that cafe feeling like I had lost a sister. When I told Ethan about the conversation, he sighed heavily. I think you handled it wrong. Now she's upset, and it's going to make things awkward at the wedding. I stared at him. So what was I supposed to do? Just ignore it? He hesitated. Maybe you're letting this get to you too much. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if I really was overreacting, if I was wrong. But a week later, I got my answer, and it shattered everything. I had gone to my parents' house, hoping to smooth things over before the wedding. As I walked up the driveway, I heard hushed voices from the side of the house. Curious, I stepped around the corner, and there they were. Lily and Ethan, their bodies pressed together, her arms wrapped around his neck, his hands gripping her waist, their lips locked. For a moment I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then it hit me like a gut punch. I gasped, the sound ripping from my throat. What the hell is this? They jerked apart, panic flashing across their faces. Ethan stammered, Rachel, it's not. But I didn't need to hear the excuses. I had seen enough. Lily's face turned pale. Rachel, please. Tears burned my eyes. How could you? My own sister? She started crying, shaking her head. I didn't mean for this to happen, but I was already backing away. Numb, I turned and walked to my car, ignoring their desperate calls behind me. I got in, slammed the door shut, and drove. I didn't stop until I reached my apartment. I packed a bag, turned off my phone, and checked into a hotel. I was done. Done with Ethan. Done with Lily. Done with anyone who made me feel like I was crazy for trusting my instincts. But as I sat alone in that hotel room, staring at the ceiling, I knew one thing for certain. I might have lost my relationship. I might have lost my sister. But her fiancé, Mark, deserved to know the truth. And I was going to make damn sure he found out. Sitting in that dimly lit hotel room, I tried to make sense of everything. The past few weeks had been a slow, gut-wrenching descent into something I never thought I'd experience. I felt like a fool, like I'd been gaslit by my own boyfriend, dismissed by my sister, and treated like I was paranoid when all along I had been right. But no matter how deep the betrayal cut, there was one undeniable fact. Mark, Lily's fiancé, deserved to know. I picked up my phone, hesitating for just a second before dialing his number. He answered on the second ring. Hey Rachel, everything okay? I almost laughed at the absurdity of that question. Instead, I took a breath, steadying myself. No, Mark, it's not. I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen before you say anything. The tone of my voice must have tipped him off because he went completely silent. So I told him everything. I told him about the way I had noticed Lily acting around Ethan, how I had confronted her, how everyone, including Ethan, had tried to make me feel like I was losing my mind. And then I told him what I saw just a few hours ago, his fiancé, wrapped around my boyfriend, kissing him like she didn't have a wedding to plan. When I finished, the silence on the other end stretched so long that I checked my phone to make sure the call was still connected. Finally, he exhaled. Where are you? His voice was eerily calm. A hotel. I'm coming over. I started to protest, but he had already hung up. About 30 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Mark stood there, looking composed. Too composed. I let him in, and he walked past me, running a hand over his face before turning back to me. Say it again, he said. Say exactly what you saw. I did. Every word. Every disgusting detail. When I finished, he let out a slow breath. I believe you. Those 3 words nearly knocked me off my feet. After weeks of being doubted and dismissed, finally someone believed me. But then Mark did something that surprised me. He sat down, leaned back in the chair, and smiled. Not a happy smile. Not even an angry one. It was the kind of smile someone wears when they've just decided to burn everything to the ground. She thinks she's getting away with this, he murmured. She thinks she's walking down that aisle like nothing happened. I frowned. Mark, what are you thinking? He looked up at me, his eyes dark with something unreadable. I'm thinking I'm not going to be the fool she marries. A chill ran down my spine. What are you going to do? He stood, stretching like this whole thing was just a minor inconvenience. Oh, don't worry, Rachel. She'll get what she deserves. And just like that, he left. For the next few days, I braced myself for the explosion, but nothing happened. Lily still wasn't talking to me. My parents were acting like I had committed some unforgivable sin by accusing her in the first place. And Ethan? He had tried calling me a few times, but I never answered. There was nothing left to say. Then, the wedding day arrived. I wasn't planning on going, obviously, but around noon, I got a call from my cousin Emma. You need to be here, she whispered urgently. I sat up in bed. What? Why? Just trust me. Get dressed and come to the church. You don't want to miss this. Curiosity won out over self-preservation, and before I knew it, I was pulling into the church parking lot. I slipped inside quietly, standing near the back. The ceremony hadn't started yet, but everyone was seated. The air buzzed with anticipation, and then the music started. Lily entered, looking stunning in her wedding dress, her smile radiant. But as I watched her walk down the aisle toward Mark, I noticed something strange. Mark wasn't smiling. In fact, his whole demeanor was cold. My stomach tightened. He was planning something. Lily reached the altar, beaming up at him. The officiant began speaking, and for a moment, I thought maybe Mark had changed his mind. Maybe he was just going to walk away quietly, leave her to deal with the consequences later. But then, I can't do this. Mark's voice rang through the church, cutting through the air like a blade. A ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. Lily's smile faltered. What? Mark turned slightly, addressing the entire audience. I can't marry someone who would betray her own sister. The church went dead silent. My heart pounded. Lily paled. Mark, what are you talking about? He pulled his phone from his pocket, tapped the screen a few times, then turned it toward the crowd. A video started playing. A video of Lily, a video of Ethan, a video of them kissing. Gasps erupted. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." Lily's hands flew to her mouth. How? Mark turned back to her, his expression unreadable. Rachel told me everything. At first, I didn't want to believe it, but then I checked your messages, and guess what? You're not even good at hiding things. Lily's breath hitched. I can explain, Mark let out a humorless laugh. No, you can't. He looked out at the crowd. I just wanted everyone here to know exactly what kind of person Lily is before I leave. And then, just like that, he turned and walked away. Lily stood there, frozen, humiliated in front of everyone. I should have felt bad. I didn't. I slipped out quietly before anyone could see me, my heart pounding with adrenaline. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed. A message from Mark. Thanks for telling me the truth. I hope you know you deserve better too. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Lily got what she deserved. And now? Now I was finally free. I don't know what I expected to feel after everything unraveled. Relief? Satisfaction? Maybe some twisted sense of victory? But as I drove away from the church, watching in my rearview mirror as guests stood in stunned silence, I just felt empty. Lily had humiliated me first. She had betrayed me, lied to me, made me feel like I was crazy. And now, the world knew the truth. Mark had made sure of that. But even so, she was still my sister. I didn't go back to the hotel that night. Instead, I drove to the one place I knew I could be alone, an old park on the edge of town, where I used to go as a teenager whenever I needed to clear my head. I sat on the swing, staring at the dark sky, listening to the wind rustling through the trees. My phone buzzed. I already knew who it was before I checked. Mom, call me. Now, I let the screen go dark. More messages followed, from my dad, from extended family members, even from Ethan. I ignored them all. The only one I read was from Mark. Mark, hope you're okay. Don't let them guilt you. They made their bed. He was right. But that didn't stop the guilt from creeping in. The next morning, I finally turned my phone back on. The news had spread fast. Lily had locked herself in her apartment, refusing to see anyone. My parents were furious not at her, but at me. As if I was the one who had kissed someone else's fiancé. As if I was the one who had ruined her wedding. I didn't respond to them. Instead, I packed up my things and checked out of the hotel. It was time to go home. When I got back to my apartment, the first thing I noticed was Ethan's car parked outside. Great. I debated turning around and leaving, but I wasn't going to run. Not from him. When I stepped out of my car, he got out of his, looking exhausted. Rachel, please, can we talk? I crossed my arms. Talk about what? How you lied to me, how you cheated on me with my sister, or how you gaslit me into thinking I was imagining things? He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. I messed up, okay? I was stupid. I don't even know why it happened. I laughed bitterly. You don't know why? That's your excuse? Ethan stepped closer. Rachel, the first swear. It didn't mean anything. It was a mistake. I shook my head. A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday. A mistake is misplacing your keys. What you did, that was a choice. His jaw tightened. So that's it then? You're just gonna throw away everything we had? I stared at him in disbelief. You threw it away the second you touched her. For the first time, something flickered in his expression, panic, maybe, or regret. But it didn't matter. It was too late. I stepped past him, unlocking my door. Don't contact me again, Ethan. We're done. And with that, I walked inside, shutting the door behind me. The days that followed were a blur. My parents continued to call, insisting I fix things with Lily. Family members took sides, some supporting me, others acting like I had personally dragged Lily to the altar and forced Mark to humiliate her. I ignored them all. Then, one afternoon, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so when I opened it to find Lily standing there, I nearly slammed it shut again. She looked awful. Her hair was a mess, her eyes red from crying. For a second, neither of us said anything. Finally, she spoke. I lost everything, she whispered. I folded my arms. I wonder how that happened. She flinched but didn't look away. Rachel, I'm so sorry. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that she was standing here because she truly regretted what she had done. But part of me couldn't help but wonder, was she sorry for hurting me? Or was she just sorry she got caught? I sighed. Lily, you were my sister, my best friend, and you threw all of that away for what? A fling? Some stupid thrill? Tears filled her eyes. I don't know why I did it. I was selfish. I was stupid. And now I have no one. I swallowed hard. You have no one because you betrayed the people who loved you. She nodded slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me. I needed to tell you I'm sorry. I studied her, searching for any sign of manipulation, any hint that she was just here to ease her own guilt. But all I saw was a broken girl who had finally realized the weight of her choices. I took a deep breath. I appreciate that, Lily, but I don't know if I can forgive you. Not yet. She nodded again, her shoulders shaking. I understand. And then, just like that, she turned and walked away. I didn't stop her. It's been a few months now. Lily moved out of town. From what I hear, she's been keeping to herself, trying to rebuild. Mark reached out a few times, just to check in. He seems to be doing well, better than me, honestly. As for Ethan, he tried texting me once. I blocked him immediately. I'm still healing. Some days are better than others. Trust doesn't come easily to me anymore, but I'm working on it. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's this. Always trust your gut. Always stand up for yourself, and never, ever let anyone make you feel crazy for knowing the truth. Because in the end, the truth always comes out.